Hi guys, Joey and Sam here to show you some of the new cards from the Chaosmos The Temple expansion. I'm gonna get this started because I got three types of claws. The one you probably are familiar with if you played the first game is the Claw of Cyclocus.
Yep.
Well, now we have the Claw of Biota, which is a combat card. So during combat, steal a card from the Cosmic Pool or from an envelope you control. So the way you could use this is if in combat you realize that there is something in the Cosmic Pool or in the envelope that you already control that you need during that combat. Let's say it's an advanced defense, spore immunity, ion shield, whatever it is, you bust this out and you get to swap out your card.
Yep.
Next claw, the Claw of Catan.
Yeah, Katoon.
Katoon.
Catan is something else.
That's right, totally else. So you can play only while on the same space as an opponent. Steal a card from their hand at random. Replace with this card or else return their card. So it basically allows you to steal from their hand, but you're doing it at random. So you never know what you might get.
Yes.
Now I have the Fungaloids to show you, also combat related. 1 spore is 0, 2 spores is 2, 3 spores is 6. Add a Fungaloid to that, and what do we add?
It's crazy. I forget. But what's interesting about the Fungaloids is they work as spores and they work as imps and they're also creatures. But here's the problem: there's cards that damage or disable creatures. There's cards that disable imps, and there's cards that disable spores. So the card is amazing, but only if the other person doesn't have any of several kinds of defenses. So it's awesome to take, but sometimes given the choice of just taking a simple primitive weapon, you're like, well, I know this is going to work. Whereas if you take that card, it could be amazing. It could combo with other cards, but it also might fail completely. So those are the Fungaloids.
Yeah, and in addition, it solves the issue of now there's just more combat cards in the game. So if you felt like you weren't able to gather enough combat cards, there's plenty of items now to fight with. Even late game.
And there's a lot of tactical combat cards where it's not just, I have another +2, I have another +1. You have to really think about why you're picking this up versus something else. And it leads to some really funny moments in the game where, Fungaloid, spore. I have the spore immunity. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, my entire hand has just been disabled. So I'm going to talk about, just super briefly, there's actually 4 traps in this expansion. You can always play with any number of telethwarter traps if you like telethwarters the most, or if you want to mix and match, totally works fine. There's a squeeze trap, which we've been teasing for literally 6 years, but we couldn't get it right. We finally cracked the squeeze trap. It squeezes the ovoid out of you. Hypertube traps, it doesn't end your turn the way telethwarter traps do, but it gives the player who set the trap, in other words, the player whose flag is there, the opportunity to teleport something from that envelope somewhere else. And then the scry trap gives them basically like a scry as well. And there's also a classic telethwarter trap in there as well with some improved wordings. A lot of people have asked about new kinds of flip cards. The Trust Locker. It's sort of like with the base, there's actually a Trust Locker token that you go down so everyone knows it's there. Then you take the flag that you just put there and you replace it with your ally's flag. What that means is only they can go back to that planet. Otherwise, it's just like a locker, like an Amazon locker. You put things in it, and then it goes to wherever it goes, and you can't access it anymore unless you have the Trust Decryptor, which lets you send things remotely directly to the locker, or if your ally goes there and takes care of it on your behalf. But the locker also breaks every time alliances break, and they break whenever there's a Concordia, which is when you form alliances. So 3 times during the game, that locker will break. So it's a very powerful, it's almost like a base that's even more powerful, but it breaks 3 times, and those times are not necessarily known ahead of time. Finally, I want to talk about Temporal Displacer 2. Temporal Displacer 2, I've been talking about online for a couple years on Board Game Geek. There's a lot of problems with Temporal Displacer. The original, it's a great card, but sometimes people would just misuse it, and games would drag on when really the natural narrative was for the game to end, but then, they wasted the card or whatever. Temporal Displacer 2 is not a single-use card. It just ends the game, and you don't spend an action. The way it works is if you ever have the Ovoid, the true Ovoid, whichever ovoid is real if you're playing counterfeit ovoid. If you ever have the ovoid and the temporal displacer on your turn or between any two other players' turns, you play them and win the game. So what that means is if I have the ovoid and I attack you to steal the displacer because it's my turn and if I lose the ovoid to you, instead of taking 15 more minutes of it getting around and finally, I get to it, other people are attacking you, in point of fairness, you deserve to win. So you say, okay, I won. I got the ovoid, I got the temporal displacer, my turn ends, it's between two players' turns, you lay it down, you win. Nice and clean, it solves a lot of problems, and it can now fast forward the game. Instead of up to 8 turns, it's up to 2 rounds, because the game now plays up to 6 players, so that could be up to 12 turns if you're playing with all 6 players. So those are some of the crazier cards, and there's a lot more. I think there's 25 or 30 new cards in the deck, and we've changed a lot of the wordings of the classic cards. So instead of just giving a few new cards to add to your deck, you'll be removing your old deck from play, unless you want to customize your game, and you'll be just playing with the new card set. So very excited about the new cards. Can't wait to talk about that more in the future. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, guys.